Hi, guys, and welcome to a new Dawn. I am Dawn, and today's episode is Fire and Ice. So, if you have been here before, thank you so much for coming back. And if this is your first time here, welcome. So, I typically use my platform to talk about my own personal experiences with domestic violence and abuse and digital stalking and how I survived. I also sometimes use my platform to talk about my struggles with infertility and choosing to become a single foster parent after the age of 40. Again, I just appreciate y'all so much for continuing to tune in. Today's episode was triggered by something that I saw on social media, and I wanted to just share a story with you guys. So just to give y'all a little bit of background, I'm sure that we're all on social media, right? So a couple months ago, around the time of the recent hurricanes, I follow someone on TikTok, a lady who I'll say that she gives relationship advice. Now, that's not something I'm necessarily looking for, but I like her because what she'll do is kind of take a scenario or a situation that's a red flag, and she will just expand on why that's a red flag and like some things to look out for when you are seeking out relationships with people. So I like her. I follow her. Sometimes what she'll do is tag the story, or she'll stitch the story that she's referencing. And so on this particular day, I saw a stitch and her response to a situation, and y'all, it brought up some memories for me. So essentially what happened was, during the hurricanes, there was a lady. She may have been in her late 20s, early 30s ish is what she looked like. I could be totally wrong, but this is kind of what she looked like from the stitch. She was in her bedroom under the covers, like covers wrapped all the way over her head, and all you could see is her little head peeking out. She was in the dark, and her tag said POV, and I can't remember if this was her boyfriend or her husband, but essentially the guy that she was with, your boyfriend or husband, decided that he doesn't want to evacuate during the incoming hurricane, but he wants to stay and hunker down. And she was like, under these covers, she had the most terrified look on her face. You could hear all this noise and ruckus in the background. Like there was actively, at least it sounded like, right? It sounded like there was like actively a storm going on, because you could hear like noise, like almost sound like hail or rainwater or something, like beating up against the window. You could hear what sounded like just a lot of noise in the background. And then I think you could hear him like talking in the background, but he wasn't in the shot with her. So the creator that I follow kind of stitched that part, and then she did her take on it. And I want to touch on my experience that was similar to that. So let's just jump right into it. So y'all know that I lived in Texas for quite some time, and I was also in an abusive relationship for quite some time. So I met my ex in 2016, and we were in Dallas, and then we moved to Houston in 2017 during a natural disaster. So during Hurricane Harvey. Now for us, we were not physically in Houston when Harvey hit. I was there right before and right after. So it's not funny. It's not funny. It's actually crazy because in hindsight, when I think about it, I was moving down there, but had I already lived there, I might have been in the same situation as her, right? I happened to be moving during that time, so I was able to evacuate, but it's because it was already part of the plan, if that makes sense. That wasn't the only time that we experienced something similar to that while we were in Houston. And in hindsight, I can say this now. When I lived in Houston, it was like hell on wheels from the time I got there until the time I left. Now, I had made some wonderful friends when I was in Houston, and some of them are like really close friends of mine now. So there is a light in that darkness that I felt when I was there. But and I had a wonderful work family. I had a wonderful work family when I was in Dallas, to be honest with you, but I had a even more amazing work family when I was in Houston. And I still do, because I actually work from home now and my team is in Houston. So I'm still connected, right? But my personal life, like my personal life and my personal relationship, it was dark the whole time I was there. I just felt like we were just living underneath a black cloud. So somewhere around, I believe 2021, which is really crazy, because the reason why I say it would be crazy if it was in 2021 is because 2021 is when I left in the summer. And I knew at the end of 2020 that I was leaving. It took me about 6 months to actually get out of that relationship. But there was so much that happened in those 6 months that some of it's almost a blur. So it really could have been in 2021. But anyway, Houston, I think like around February-ish, there was a ice storm that hit Houston, and it actually was 2 of them that came back to back. And Houston don't get ice. I mean, I just talked to my coworkers yesterday and they told me it's 80 degrees down there. It's November. So Houston don't get ice. When they do get ice, they're not prepared for it. It's not like the Midwest where we have things to clean the roads off. It's not like, we kind of know what the season is going to bring, so we typically prepare for these things beforehand. It's not like that. So there was an ice storm, which that's also difficult to prepare for no matter where you live. But it was 2 of them that came back to back, and it froze everything, and people lost power and were out of power for days. People didn't have water for days. We know people, I know people that I work with whose pipes burst. So they ended up having water damage to deal with on top of these frigid, freezing temperatures. And it was just a crazy time. In the area that I lived at the time, the first day that the storm hit, my job ended up calling that morning and saying, don't come in. There was a pipe that burst overnight or something at the office. So the building was closed. They didn't want anybody to come in and work from home. So I was like, okay. Because I was at home and I lived like on the southern part, like south of downtown, that storm system hadn't hit my area yet. So that day it was a Monday. I just kind of went on like business as usual. The storm, I think, started on Sunday night. It hadn't hit my area yet, so I didn't notice anything different. And I worked from home. It was a Monday. It was busy for me. It was quiet though. And I didn't realize until after the fact that a lot of people lost power. Their cell phones were out because they didn't have them charged up the night before. Cell service, the towers were down. So even if they were charged up, they couldn't get a signal. The internet was out, and I started having difficulty with my internet like midday. But again, I didn't really think too much of it because looking outside my window, I didn't see anything. So it just progressively got worse during the week, right? And so for the next like 2 days, that storm system came through, it froze everything, like it was like all this damage. So at the time, my boyfriend, I believe he had ended up going to work on that Monday, and then by Tuesday, he wasn't able to get out. The place that he worked at was like, don't come in, da 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 da. So then we knew it was like kind of serious, right? Well, they have been talking about on the news like these rolling power outages, and that's not something I ever experienced before in my life. But if my memory serves me correct, I think that the power company was like intentionally cutting off the power grid in certain areas to preserve the energy that they had. So you would go these like extended hours without power. Now, the first day the storm hit, we were fine. Second day, we lost our power. We lost our power like early morning, and it never came back on until we went almost a whole day. So the power didn't come back on until maybe like 9 or 10 at night. It was on for about 45 minutes. So we were able to take a shower, warm up the house. We turned the oven on. We were able to cook food, et cetera, et cetera. And then it went back out and we was like, whatever. Now, during this time, it was cold, okay? Now, I'm from the Midwest. So, and I went to college in Michigan. So being cold, being in an ice storm, being in a blizzard, in a snowstorm, it's really nothing new to me. To my boyfriend at the time, he had never experienced anything like it. He's from Mississippi and we were living in Texas. So for me, you know, when all of this is happening, I'm thinking like, okay, if the power is going to come back on, we need to make sure we're charging our devices. So in an emergency, like, you know, we can call for help or whatever. You know, like I said, we was able to cook and boil water and warm up the house and, you know, all the things that we wanted to do, shower with the lights on, you know, everything. Well, the first day that we lost power was interesting because it was cold and it was just getting colder and colder and colder. And it really was nothing you could do. It was cold and we didn't have no power, but it was during the day. So, you know, the light from the outside was like lighting up the house. And, you know, I had mentioned like we really should preserve lighting the candles or using the flashlights until actually it's dark outside, right? So, you know, my advice was like, and if y'all grew up in the Midwest or anywhere it's cold, you'll probably laugh when I say this. My advice was like, sit still. Sit still, be quiet, layer up, you know, let's get close and comfortable so we can stay warm and get through this, right? So the first day when we kind of lost power, he took my advice. It was tough, but he took my advice. So we ended up just layering up in clothes and blankets, and we took a nap for like, I don't even know how many hours because we didn't have power. So there was no internet there. I mean, it was nothing he could do. The second day, his anxiety was rising a little bit more and more and more. And he would just be pacing around the house. Like, you know, he's tired of this. He don't know what to do. It's so cold. It's so effing cold. Da, 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 da. And I would be like, calm down, calm down, calm down. You know, like we just have to wait this thing out, right? The thing about it is because we know people who, my friend actually had a baby during this time. So she was at home with a newborn baby during all of this. I know some of my friends who ended up, you know, being displaced. They had to leave their homes because they had small children and they didn't have power. So they ended up trying to go to a hotel or trying to go to a family member's house. You know, some of my coworkers' pipes burst. So they had all this water damage in their home while it was like freezing cold temperatures outside. So it was like a nightmare for people, right? People didn't stock up. So they didn't have food. You know, they didn't have clean water to drink because they didn't, you know, buy water. So you had to boil water and it was just like all this stuff, right? So I was like, you know, my optimistic self, I'm like, it could be a lot worse, you know, like there's so much stuff going on, like it could be a lot worse. By day 2, I was starting to get a little bit of cabin fever and I was like really, to be honest, getting a little bit annoyed because he was like, his anxiety was just going up and up and up. He was starting to get on 10. So there was one point where like I had heard that some of the stores were open. Some of the fast food restaurants were open, but it would take like hours for you to get something to eat because it was low staff. You know, they were working off of generators, etc. But I was like, I'm gonna go out. Like, I'm gonna go out and see what's open. First of all, I need to get out of the house. In my mind, I'm like, I need to get out of the house. I need to get away from you for a minute. But I was like, I just need to get out and like see what the lay of the land, like see what's going on out there and what we're able to do. And again, we had food, we had water, so we actually should have been fine. It was just, we were cold. We were lucky in the situation. So I remember for 2 days in a row that was kind of our situation. And 2 days in a row, I remember going out. And by the third day, when the power was out, that's when it got crazy. So, you know, again, it had been cold. It was freezing temperature. We didn't have internet, so I wasn't worried about working. But, you know, I knew the job that I had on salary. So I knew it was like, I'm not missing out on no money, right? For him, he can't work. He's not making no money. And he was actually employed at the time. So that next night is when it got, like, at first it started with like his anxiety was just getting up there. And I was getting like tight because I'm like, I don't want to be in the house with him. Like, I could see him coming unhinged, right? He had already been abusive towards me. The abuse was never like a daily occurrence, but it happened enough and it was never okay. So I'm not condoning it. The frequency doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, like, it happened enough that I would be on eggshells because I never knew when or what would set him off. But I had been around him long enough to know like when he's coming unhinged, right? So I would step out because I'm like, this is getting hard for me to handle. And you don't know what he's gonna do. Let me sidebar real quick. We had a fireplace. I was in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor and we had a fireplace and we never used it. So on that third day, he got the bright idea, let's use the fireplace. We didn't have any firewood, but he felt like maybe he could just go outside to the woods and find something, right? So he left and drove around for who even knows how long to try to find wood. And he came back and he was like, it's no good, it's all wet, right? And I was like, you know, we were not in a position where we could go buy firewood from the store because the stores were closed and whatever stores were open, supplies were low. So he thought, what can I burn? And he started throwing stuff in the fireplace. At first it started out as like paper, like newspaper, like old papers, magazines. So then it got to be bigger things like boxes. And then it turned into a dresser. So one of the end tables that we had in the 2nd bedroom, he decided to break it apart and throw it in the fireplace and poured lighter fluid, like for the grill, like poured lighter fluid on it and set it on fire to keep the place warm. When he did that, the flames came out of the fireplace like, and when I tell y'all, I was terrified. I never seen anything like it. This wood from this dresser burnt so quickly. Like he poured lighter fluid on it. So and he was pouring lighter fluid on like the fire before he put this dresser in there. But once he put the dresser in it, the flames just went berserk. And, you know, think of the fireplace being a square area like this. The flames were coming out like up the fireplace. And I thought we were gonna die. I thought he was gonna set the apartment on fire. And I had said to him so many times, like, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's how you use that. I don't think that's what you should do. Like, I don't think so. And I remember us like kind of going back and forth about it, and he was like getting hype. And I remember him like making comments about like being a man and being able to protect us and being able to make a decision about how to keep us warm in this situation. And what we were doing is not working, and he's fed up. He just can't take it no more. I can't sit here in this cold no more. And the fire was like, to me, out of control, because I've never seen a fire in a fireplace come out of the fireplace and up the wall, basically up the brick. He kept adding stuff to it, and I just thought, this ain't gonna end well. And he's not listening to me. He's almost at a point where he's tuning me out. And he turned on some music, and he was smoking a cigarette because it was warm. It was getting warm in the house. And I remember this fire lighting up the whole living room. I mean, it was like bright in the living room. And this was like in the middle of the night because it was pitch black dark outside. And I was so scared. And I remember going to the bathroom, knowing that I didn't have to go to the bathroom, but I was like, I just need to step away for a second. And when I was in the bathroom, I heard the fire department outside, and I thought they were coming to our place, but they weren't. But I remember being in the bathroom, and I remember praying to God, like, please don't let me die tonight. I think I was in there for a little while, because if my memory serves me correct, he knocked on the door to make sure I was okay or something. You know, I don't know. I wasn't even using the bathroom, but I just didn't have nowhere else to go. I just remember praying to God, like, please don't let me die tonight. Please don't let me die like this. And I was like, almost in tears, but I felt like I can't cry because I don't want him to see me crying. And because I knew it would be disregarded, I knew that would set him off even more, you know, because he would feel like I don't trust him or whatever. So I just had to like pull myself together and go back out and pretend that things were okay. And, you know, I didn't even have cell service. My battery wasn't charged up. You know, this was like the third day of us within this rolling power outages. So my phone didn't keep a charge, and I didn't have cell service anyway. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I went back in there, and you know, we made it through the night, but it was one of the scariest times that I was with him, that he didn't physically touch me, but I felt like my life was in danger. I just want to say again, I want y'all to be careful out there, because sometimes abuse and being in a toxic situation looks very differently. So what you think of abuse being physical does not always physical. Sometimes it's your mental too. He had me feeling like I can't speak up to save my life. You know, I was afraid to like speak up or walk away from a very dangerous situation to save my life, because I was afraid of, what is he going to do to me while I'm trying to do it? So I just want y'all to be careful out there. Your life is never that unimportant to put yourself in jeopardy or danger or in harm's way, like knowingly put yourself in harm's way for the sake of someone else's stupidity. So I just want y'all to be careful out there, especially because I mentioned this in my last video. We are entering into some challenging and maybe troublesome times. And I learned this with a different situation, but this was like added on to it. When people don't know how to handle stress, sometimes they take that out on you, or it comes out in these very different ways, and it could cause you real harm. So I want y'all to be careful. I want y'all to keep an eye out for red flags. I mean, I'm going to tell y'all, like, at my big grown age of 40 plus, I never thought I would be in an abusive relationship in my 30s and 40s, because I thought I know better, right? But you don't know what you're going to do in a situation until you're in that situation. So don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, especially when it comes to your safety. So I just want y'all to keep that in mind. And that's all I got today, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys as always. Please don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe. And I will catch y'all next time. Bye.